Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Justin Kennington. Welcome to SDVoE Live. This is TV for Pro AV. Folks, we are back. It's been a great summer, and they've let us back on air for Season 2. Isn't that the great thing about having your own TV channel? They always let your TV show come back. But actually, we're not just our own TV channel anymore. I want to offer a special warm welcome to those of you watching us in rAVe's Replay Week. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm very happy to announce that this year for Season 2, we've created a great new partnership with rAVe, where our show, SDVoE Live, will be broadcast not only inside the SDVoE Academy, welcome to those of you watching there, but also on rAVe's launch platform. So thanks for joining us. If you're just here for Replay Week and just finding out about SDVoE Live, I hope you'll enjoy the show. And please be aware that we do this every 2 weeks, so come back and see us for the rest of the season. We're going to run this all the way through May 2022 this year. For Season 2, I said we've just come back from a summer break, but it was a very busy summer. We polled our audience. We found out what was working in the show, what could be improved, how can we make this a better show for you. And the feedback we heard said we want more time with the guests. We want the interviews to be deeper. Don't hold any punches. Let's see what these people really have to say. So that's what we're going to do. We're also going to keep some of the news coverage and news commentary that we know our audience loves and benefits from professionally. So again, thank you for joining us. I also want to mention from a topics perspective, this has been a show about technology. And we're going to keep it there. It's a show for Pro AV, but this year we're also going to spend some time on the human side, the personal side of Pro AV, and explore some of the people in the industry, how they got here, and what that means. Today is going to be a technology show. Today we're talking about the state of AV over IP as seen at InfoComm 2021. Our guest, Gary Kayye, is maybe the best person to even talk about that since he sends his team to all of the hundreds of booths at these trade shows. Who's going to have a better perspective than Gary? So if you have questions that you want me to ask Gary, get an email to live@sdvoe.org, and I'll be monitoring that live during the show. And if you have questions for Gary, I'll go ahead and bring those to him, and we'll hear what he wants to say. So without further ado, why don't we check out a little trivia question and see what else is in store. All right, everybody, scratch your answers down. I don't want any cheating when we show you the answer in a few minutes. Here's a great new segment we have on the show for this year called the Hotline Central. And Matt Dodd, my co-host, is manning the Hotline Central, so let's check in. Matt, are you there?
Oh, yeah, keep it going, guys, keep it going. Hey, Justin, how you doing? How do you think of your new set? This is fantastic, right? Fantastic. Hi, everybody. I'm here in Hotline Central with loads and loads of calls coming in, so keep them coming in. Justin, good to see you again. How are you?
You want to video it?
I'm good, Matt. It feels great to be back on the show, don't you think?
I'm sorry?
Great. Well, listen, please do keep your questions in. Live@sdvoe.org. We've got loads of people back here, loads of people running the phones. So I think we've actually had a few in here already, Justin, to say that what did Matt deserve? I don't know. Why have you pushed Matt into the screen? Why is he not in the... Oh, it's not about me. We have had a question here, though, that you need to push to Gary, perhaps from Georgia Smith-Barney from Rock Island in Illinois, who's keen to know what it was like there, what it was like at InfoComm. A small attendance, I'm sure, but did that make a difference? Did that make a difference to the way, the feel of the show? So worth throwing that one in there, Justin.
I'll push it over to Gary. Meanwhile, why don't you come join me, check out this set yourself, and let's talk about some news.
Love to. In the meantime, here's the answer to that question.
Whoa. Come on in. What do you think?
This is lovely. This is lovely. Whole new show set. I'm very impressed. Yeah, how's the seat? Is it comfortable enough?
Oh, I'm telling you, the number one thing about Season 2 so far for me is that I get a chair almost the whole show.
Thanks.
An evolution.
And I don't even get a cooler box. Anyway, not taken personally. Shall we discuss some of the news?
The sting says, let's do it.
Here we are again. Here we go. News item number 1. FOMO, fear of missing out. Did you get any FOMO from this show, JK?
I got a little bit, I'm going to be honest. A couple of months ago, we decided that SDVoE Alliance just wasn't going to be able to put on a good show. The travel restrictions were a big problem for us since the bulk of our team is based in Canada. Our video team, right across the room from me here, is based in the UK. I didn't see a way for us to make it effective. But I have to say, after watching some of the social media coverage, a lot of the news articles that came out last week, talking to some of my friends who were at the show, I really did wish it had been able to go a different way. So too bad about that. But it seems like it was a very an interesting show, and I'm really looking forward to ISE for sure. Matt, did you get to see any coverage? Did you wish you could have been there? Were you thinking about sneaking over in a rowboat, or how does that work from the UK?
Well, we're not allowed to do that anymore, apparently. But no, I really wished. Of course, I wished I could have been there. It was such a shame that first InfoComm in many years that I haven't been able to make. But having spoken to a lot of the guys who are out there, they did say that there was an intimacy at the show. Even though it felt a bit strange, I think we're all in agreement that there's a real hunger out there for trade show attendance and coming back to them again. I'm looking forward to hearing what Gary's got to say. But absolutely, ISE, bring it on. It's I think there's a lot of people now who are just ready. They're just absolutely ready. Certainly over this side of the pond to head back into trade show world. But yeah, I would imagine that. I think what I missed most of all was the connection, the networking, being able to see our buddies again. Right, we've been locked away globally for such a long time, and it's so important to us, mental health wise. It's just important to us to get out there amongst our friends and peers and just talk about the industry, talk about the tech. And speaking of tech, let's head over to news item number 2. I think this is certainly a really interesting topic you've picked here, and there's something very interesting, particularly interesting about it. Isn't that right, Justin Kennington of the SDVoE Alliance?
First of all, Matt, that was a beautiful segue. Really nicely done. Yeah, so every year, of course, several of the magazines and publications give out awards for interesting technology, for interesting products, for useful devices. And this year, like any other year, AV Technology gave out a set of awards, about 18 or 20, I think, total awards for AV Technology. I guess that's the name of the magazine, but also the name of the category. What I thought was, and this was a very broad category, right? They gave it for microphones and collaboration displays and large-scale projectors and so on, all different categories across Pro AV. But what I noticed as I browsed through the list is that only 3 of the products in the list were specifically related to AV signal distribution, devices that move video signals across a network, across a switch, etc. And all 3 of those products were SDVoE based products. So that was very exciting for me. It's worth calling some of them out. There were the 3 of them out. ZV's Zyper 4K XS, which are their encoders and decoders, and some of the very first to be based on a new ASIC chip from Semtech. So this is a chip that's going to really reduce the power consumption and the overall cost of SDVoE systems. Great to see some of that out there, especially from a leading SDVoE player such as ZV, one of our founding members. Also, Black Box MCX series. So Black Box has made a big splash in the SDVoE arena with a complete solution of encoders, decoders, and software to manage a distribution network. Their product won this award too. And then last but not least, Aurora Multimedia's IPX UC1 Ultra, that's for you, Paul, is actually a really cool device. The first bidirectional real-time AV over IP encoder decoder. It also mixes not only SDVoE but some 1 gig technology. It uses NDI and it uses H.264, and it can actually cross those domains and move signals from one domain to the other. Matt, what did you think about it?
And I mean, that Aurora piece is fantastic. It just goes to show how the technology is so rapidly evolving. You know, that something else that's been included in these devices now are the really cool compositing features. So it's, we talk about video wall a lot, but the fact that we can get a video wall that's built in jigsaw puzzles type fashion, this growth, this evolution of the feature sets that we already have spoken about for a while now. It just goes to show how quickly that's coming into market, and the options and the flexibility that these products have. So yeah, really cool. The Aurora box, I spent a little time just before we went live, just looking at the feature sets. It just goes on and on and on. So very impressive. Keep your eye out for the transceiver now, the encoder and decoder, the all-in-one thing. Great feature packs, and obviously, that's going to really help from a business perspective to suit project scope and budget, of course, where you've got that even further flexibility between devices. So some great news there, JK. Some great news. I believe you've got a guest coming up. I know you've got a guest coming up. I think he's waiting in the back there. Who have we got today?
I do. So as I say goodbye to you, I'll remind folks, these news articles, look down below me. If you're in the SDVoE Academy, in the resources section to find the links.
I'm going to go now,
and if
by
you're
the way.
Watching us on, bye Matt. And if you're watching us on the launch platform, look in the chat window and you'll see some of these links, so you can go look into these products and news articles a little bit more. Our guest today, Gary Kayye, President, CEO, founder of rAVe Publications. And really, as I kind of said in the introduction, I'm not sure there's anyone better to sum up a trade show than the guy who's crazy enough to try and take a video of every single booth at a trade show. So Gary, welcome.
Hey, Justin, how are you?
I'm doing very well. So how was it? You're back? Are your arms tired? How was the trip? How was the first trade show first big trade show in 2 years?
I was so excited to be there with 5 or 6, 7,000, including exhibitors, other people. They haven't announced official numbers, but there's no question it beat my expectations. I think that as long as you had realistic expectations that it was going to be a small show, as Matt said, it was more intimate. I can imagine how some people who didn't go might have a little bit of FOMO because it was a unique kind of different opportunity, because you actually got to spend a lot of time with people. Like I saw the Netgear team, John, for example, from Netgear 5 or 6 times, and every time we had a conversation. And before, I'm rushing from booth to booth and don't have much time for conversations. And what it showed me is that the power of trade shows is the networking side of things and the people stuff. So I think what's going to happen in the future is you're going to see less product being shown and focused on at trade shows, and more people stuff being focused on at trade shows in the future.
So, well, that gets to something I wanted to explore, which is what do you think are the lessons that people will take from this InfoComm that they're going to apply to future shows? How is the modern AV trade show going to change as a result of what people saw at this InfoComm?
Well, the shows like ISE and Avixa's InfoComm show and other shows like that they're not going to die. Like, people think that shows are going to die. They're not going to die that quickly, and they're not going to die. Some of the shows, like big ones like these, aren't going to die. But what I think will happen is that brands will come up with different ways to use that presence. I don't think most manufacturers are going to gear product launches around trade shows anymore. There was already a move away from that over the last 5 or 6 years, but certainly over the pandemic, it became a lot easier for brands to launch product. There were so many online events, webinars. They built their digital audiences and the relationship with their the trust with the digital audience. They did a better job building it over the last year and a half, because a lot of brands, they had a website, but that's it. And it was more static. Now they all had to add webinar functionality. And I think what's going to happen is that they're going to utilize that for product introductions and then wait for trade shows to build better relationships and still show product there, but not as many as before.
Isn't that almost sort of all, what's old is new again? Isn't that what trade shows for us were 25 years ago, when it was taking orders on the show floor and really moving product. I'm not saying we're going all the way there necessarily, but that was fundamentally more about networking and meeting people than about new product launches. Is this just another cycle of life?
Well, I will say from my own experience, I'll give you a personal experience. When I was at Extron and I first started there, so my first trade show at Extron, we were a little small company surrounded by big brands, companies like Sharp and Barco and Sony that were there at the show, big broadcast brands like Panasonic and Ross. And we had a very small booth, and it was very difficult for us to get any attention, which is the whole reason why I started the program where we go to trade shows. rAVe goes to trade shows and shoots videos at every single booth. Because I remember how it felt to spend a lot of time and effort fixing up a booth and having barely anyone go to the booth, because the show was so busy that people just didn't have time to notice us or even care about us, even though we wanted them to care about us. And this is Extron. This is a brand that now is like the leading, one of the leading brands in the industry, right? So that show didn't help us. What happened was, once I came up with the concept of coming out with shooting videos at every single booth, it equalized the playing field so that small exhibitors who, there's 240,000 people in our industry. Only best year possible, 45,000 went to InfoComm, which means that about 200,000 didn't even go to the show. But then they'd come back and look at our coverage, and everybody's box and squares for their videos was exactly the same size. It equalized everyone. Mm-hmm. So you could discover new products. And I think that's the reason why shows will continue to exist, because there's going to be a need for brands to still be discovered. And I think if there's less products and more people and more networking and more relationships and events and things like that, then that's going to give those smaller companies an easier ability to be discovered.
So I feel like we've kind of touched on the answer to this, but I want to give a shout out again to Georgia. Thank you for writing in your question. She said, of course, it seems like the show was much smaller in attendance this year, but was that necessarily a bad thing?
I mean, we all knew it was going to be smaller. I mean, with the pandemic, there was just tons of people that just said they didn't want to go. I mean, I don't want to say tons, thousands. So instead of 45,000 people, including exhibitors, depending on how they count it, I don't know if they're going to count. I went to the show 3 days. Are they going to count me as 3, or are they going to count me as 1? Because every show is different how they count things. But if they count me as just 1 for the 3 days, I think that we'll have something like 7,000 people that went to the show. And then you have the exhibitors too. So, including the exhibitors is maybe another 1,500, 2,000 people. So definitely it was a lot smaller. But I don't think you'll talk to anyone who went to the show who will say they were disappointed in going to the show. Now, I definitely think you'll talk to people who are happy they didn't go to the show because of the risks and the reward trade-off. Because there wasn't a lot. Like, it's not like you could do that whole show in a day. It's not like there was a whole bunch of amazing technology we'd never seen before, like there is often at shows, because a lot of it had already been introduced, and virtually no one has a cycle to introduce products in October. So when InfoComm got moved from June to October, it meant that what we were going to see is stuff that was already introduced. But people like Crestron, the biggest booth on the show floor, they didn't have any products, not a single product in their booth. They had a sign promoting their road show, right? But Aurora, who was right at the front of the hall, they surrounded their product. They had an L-shaped booth where they had, I don't know, at least 10 different products in the booth, and they made it like a regular show. So depending on what you were doing, you got something out of the show. So it's not like I think the people who didn't go are happy they didn't go. The people who did go are happy they went. So I think everyone is satisfied. And I think Avixa did a pretty good job pulling it off.
Yeah. Well, I kind of wish I'd seen it, is the honest truth. Let me drag us back to...
If you go to ravepubs.com, you can if you go to ravepubs.com/InfoComm 2021. All 420 some videos that we shot are right there, and you can literally play through them all and watch every single new product video. I mean, literally, that's what we do. And
that's amazing.
You don't have to do anything to get them.
You got to have a ton of people cranking away all weekend at that.
We did. We had people work over the weekend.
Let me drag us back to where I need to take the show, which is, let's talk about signal distribution specifically. Now, maybe your answer is what you've talked about, that the product wasn't the focus, but did you see any important new trends in the signal distribution area, right? Where we hear an SDVoE play, and is AV over IP trending the same way it has? Is there any changes? What's going on with the technology for distribution these days. What did InfoComm show you?
Well, the probably the number one thing that's going to accelerate AV over IP in 2022 is going to be NDI. The fact that NDI is being adopted by so many brands is going to actually accelerate AV over IP. So I think you'll see a lot of NDI in SDVoE products for control and management. And I think that will accelerate the adoption rate of AV over IP. It was already there. It depends on the segment. If you're in the higher education, AV over IP was the way to go. Like there's nobody in higher education building systems the old fashioned way if they don't have to. And then, if they're just fixing a room that already exists, okay. But if they're building a new rooms, they're all putting them in AV over IP. Corporate is going to be slower because still no one knows how many people are going to go back to the office. UCC is already networked. So taking that outside the UCC room, like the meeting room, into other spaces, the best way to do that is AV over IP. So I think if you're not doing AV over IP, kudos to you and your team because your SDVoE Academy is a great learning source. And I don't know, definitely more than half of those classes don't even mention SDVoE. So if you're concerned about taking that class and feeling like you're just going to get a sales pitch, you're not. I have to give you hats off for that because you actually put together a really good program there. So I think that there's an easy way for you to kind of drop in. But at the same time, we're going to have parallel systems, right? You're going to have the IPMX, you're going to have Crestron, Extron, and then you're going to have SDVoE all running in parallel. And depending on who you're aligned with is who you're going to put in.
Okay. Well, of course, we want everyone to align with SDVoE, but that's a topic for another show. Do you think that with some of the trends you mentioned, is AV over IP finally heading towards a majority? I think the consensus that I've seen and that I believe is that still today the matrix switch is the bulk of ports that are shipping into designs that are getting installed. Do you see that changing in 2022 as a result of some of these trends?
It won't be more than 50%, but you're moving that direction. I mean, you're probably going to tip to 30%, which is a significant tipping point for the industry. And then the availability is going to be an issue. So I think if products are available and there's plenty of availability out there and the shipping constraints and supply constraints and chip constraints don't become an issue, 2020 year will be a huge year for AV over IP. If those become an issue, then it'll be 2024. So I think that if Aurora said, we got tons of product in stock, don't worry about it, we're not going to have any problems. If that's true for everybody, then you're okay. If the big inhibiting factor isn't going to be technology adoption, it's going to be availability.
That's interesting that you bring that up. We've got a show scheduled in a few weeks to talk about the supply chain with Mark Coxon. But I think that's kind of a wild card in all this. Honestly, it's going to depend on what products, what chips aren't available. Right? It could be that what you need for a matrix switch isn't available, and suddenly AV over IP is the only game in town. Or it could go the other way, that the pieces you need for AV over IP aren't there, and a matrix switch is what you have to stick with. I know.
Well, the nice thing about AV over IP is you have a lot less gear in a system, so you're probably going to benefit from the chip shortage because you're taking a product that may have had, a system that may have had, 60 core chips in it for a typical, large lecture hall kind of environment, or a heavy duty meeting room environment's going to have 20 or 30 chips, and you're bringing it down to 6 or 7. So it could benefit from that, but I don't know. I mean, I will tell you that a lot of big brands told me they're going to have major supply problems the first quarter of next year. A lot.
That's something that's really coming for us all. Not only professionally, but even personally. It's a
I told all my friends back in April, if you're in the market for a TV during the holidays, you need to buy it now because you're going to pay twice as much. And TV prices have gone up 50% since then.
Wow! I hadn't noticed that. I do have a closet full of Legos that I pretend are in case there's a supply chain issue for my kids for Christmas. Of course, my kids are 4 and 5 years old, and these are like adult Lego sets, but I pretend it's for them. So that helps me.
The greatest, by the way, you bring up Legos. The greatest ad for Legos ever is a headline that says, Legos, destroying parents' feet since 1946 or something like that. I mean, like it's the greatest ad because that's exactly how I think of a Lego, is stepping on it in the middle of the night.
I'm with you. Actually, my 4-year-old for the first time got it himself the other day. He stepped on one, and I mean, okay, I love my son. I don't want to see him cry, but there was a moment of, yeah, you see what I've been dealing with, punk. He's okay, folks. Don't worry, he's just fine. Gary, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for the partnership and for featuring us on Replay Week today. Again, hello to everyone watching us on Launch. We're very excited to have you
not just part of Replay Week. We're very excited to have you part of Launch. The whole season is going to be inside of Launch. We're excited to be part of it, and we're proud to have been picked. And SDVoE, the Academy, I hope you're going to push that, because that's a big deal.
We are. Check those links below. You'll be in the Academy in no time. Gary, we'll say goodbye for now, and we'll take the audience to a quick fact check.
Guys, I wish you would not leave that Lego on the ground. It's really painful. How did the interview go, Justin?
It was fine. What a coincidence. We were just talking about that.
Well, how about that? Yeah, it was a really good interview, actually. Very, very good. And thank you again to Gary. Some lovely words there about SDVoE Academy, and which you'll find in this page inside Academy. You'll find links, resource links to some great courses relating to this show. Related course links, in fact. The first has Gary in it, and it's Gary explaining really the power of interoperability and what that actually means. And it's SDVoE in Interop, and you'll find a link here on the new show page here in Academy. Don't forget, please do get your comments, your messages, anything. Just talk to us through live@sdvoe.org. We can't wait to hear from you. Secondly, we've also got, just very quickly, we've got the second course in there, which is, remember last season we had Chris Chinnock from the 8K Association and Steph Tremblay from SDVoE, and we had some rivalry about 8K. Well, we've got them both together now, which is fantastic. So check that course out. It's all about SDVoE. 8K is a little bit of behind the scenes, SDVoE under the hood. And check that out. We've got a new category for that as well. I'm still busy flat out here on the phones with the guys, so I'm going to head back over to JK in the studio. Keep it going.
All right, guys, here we are. We've made it. What a great show. Thanks to Gary. Thanks to everyone in the replay audience. Thanks to our faithful viewers in the SDVoE Academy. And thank you to this episode's sponsor, Semtech, one of the steering members and founders of the SDVoE Alliance. I want to thank them for their support for the show. I also want to remind you to check us out on social media. You can find us on Twitter, on LinkedIn, all your favorite social media platforms at hashtag SDVoE Live. And don't miss us on YouTube, where the archive of the show is always available. So if you miss an episode, if you want to see something again, head on over to youtube.com/SDVoE Alliance, and you'll find us. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll get noticed for anything new that we post. We do this show every 2 weeks, as Gary already mentioned. If you're watching us in replay, I want you to come back to the Launch platform 2 weeks from today. We're going to talk to my new friend Alexis Lebroy about bringing young talent and energy into the AV industry. Should we do it? Is it worth it? You can imagine she thinks yes, and I have to say she's got some good arguments. And then more importantly, how do we get that done? So that's something to watch for 2 weeks from today, November 16th. Tune in, the exact same place that you're tuned in right now. Meanwhile, if you want to have a reminder, if you want to have some way to know what's coming up, to see our full season schedule, head on over to sdvoe.org/live and get all that information. With that, it's time for me to wrap up this show. Thanks to Gary, thanks to Matt, thanks to Paul and George in the studio, and everyone, have a great time and a great night. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Goodbye.